Good morning from Toquima Campground. Oh, it's a beautiful day out here. Not too hot yet. Still got some cloud coverage. We're waking up slow after pushing it a little too hard yesterday, where we arrived here at 10 p.m. Cooked up some burgers and passed the hell out. But this is one of our favorite campgrounds. It's up in the Toquima Mountains at Pete's Summit, which divides Big Smoky Valley and Monitor Valley, pretty close to Nevada's geographic center. And it seems like it might not be the best campground. It's really dry, but it is because very few people stop and actually stay here overnight. And it also provides access to one of the coolest damn caves in the whole state. There's a lot of places in Nevada that we knew Nevada's first inhabitants used as sacred spaces, and we like to think about that a lot as we're traveling along these remote Nevada back roads to all these far-flung destinations, about the first people who were there, you know. Wonder if anybody's ever stood on top of that peak, or who was the first person to sit in this hot spring. But it's also pretty amazing to be at a place like Toquima Cave, where you know the Western Shoshone used and frequented often, and imagine them hiking on this same trail. So we have been lucky enough to see and experience most things along Nevada back roads through the years. And one thing I think that gets overlooked a lot is the way that we can connect to the past through American Indians, you know, the first inhabitants of Nevada's Great Basin. And there really aren't a lot of museums and history centers or really experiences across Nevada to be able to engage with its past in that way. There's the Lost City Museum in Overton, which is one, of course, and that really depicts the life of the ancestral Puebloans. And then there's the Stewart Indian School, which was a very grim chapter of American history, one of 300 boarding schools across America that remains. I think it's one of two that's left. And that's a pretty dark chapter, but worth learning, of course. And then there's the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe Museum that's out at Pyramid Lake, which is Nevada's largest tribe. But other than that, you know, you really kind of have to look for these wild locations. And they are also incredible because you can connect instantly through physical evidence with Nevada's past, which is really special. There's a bunch of sacred sites down in southern Nevada, petroglyphs mostly. There's some really incredible places at White River Narrows, which is a Basin and Range National Monument. Gold Butte, I think, takes the cake for the most impressive petroglyphs in all of Nevada. It's just insane down there. But this, of course, is, I think, to my knowledge, the only pictograph site in Nevada. I'm sure there are more that the majority of the people who live here and pass through here don't know about. But anyway, this place is really special because you won't find many other pictograph examples throughout the state. So even though most petroglyph sites or pictograph sites across Nevada, you know, they're all meaningful, all really cool in their own way, most of them have maybe like a few dozen illustrations. With the exception of Gold Butte, there's a ton down there. But Toquima Cave has more than 300 illustrations, which is pretty amazing. They believe that they would have gotten this pigment, red, black, white, and yellow, by trading, but they're from, you know, naturally occurring particles. So pretty fascinating. 300 illustrations at Toquima Cave. Wow. such a short little walk. Wow. Special every time. So you've got the cave, and then the view, which has remained the same all these years. Pretty special. So the Western Shoshone still have a really strong presence. There's a reservation of theirs still in the region in Reese River Valley, which is just one valley over from here, basically. They, still hold sacred ceremonies in Toquima Cave, which is really cool. They're the only ones that have access to it, which, should pretty much be the way that it is. But it is really cool that they have built it in such a mindful way to allow people to come up and check it out, respectfully, and keep vandals out at the same time. But for caves that have pretty much been lost to time, the cool thing is that they were mostly rediscovered by guano miners at the turn of the 20th century. So they would come and mine the bat poo for fertilizer. And they knew that it naturally existed in so many caves throughout the West. And many of Nevada's sacred cave sites were basically rediscovered by guano miners that way. Some of those caves include Lovelock Cave, which had the cachet of tule duck decoys, which is now Nevada's state artifact. And I think some of those original tule duck decoys are in the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. Let's think. Hidden Cave, I think, was, well, I should backtrack. It was either guano miners or kids playing around. That's how Hidden Cave was discovered. Rediscovered. Some boys were playing in the hills and felt a cool breeze come out of the ground and were able to wiggle into it, and I think it's like the size of 2 NBA basketball courts. It's freaking huge. But yeah, that's also the kind of special thing about Toquima Cave, is that it's always been monitored and maintained by the tribe that's had presence in this region forever. So very cool. So it's amazing to me, those vibrant yellow and red drawings, those pictographs inside of Toquima Cave. And after all these years later, they're still so vibrant. Like when I'm away from it, that's all I remember. And I came across this piece of Nevada Wonderstone and thought, hey, that reminds me of Toquima Cave. Let's make a pin. Well, this campground was pretty peaceful until about 10 minutes ago when everybody woke up and fired up their dirt bikes for an hour and a half. But we're here.
Here we are.
We're doing it.
Doing the thing.
And we have Elkie.
Yep.
Let Elkie come say hi. Come here.
No, that's dangerous.
That's okay. So here we are in the middle of Toquima Campground at the top of Pete's Summit in the Toquima Mountain Range. We're going to make this amazing, vibrant red Wonderstone into a Nevada pin in honor of the best pictographs in North America in Toquima Cave. Let's do it. When you're really out in Nevada's mighty basins and far-reaching peaks, it's really easy to feel like you're connected to something bigger, something that you definitely can't find in metropolitan areas or even big, wide-open landscapes of the American West. There's something about driving up and over those valleys, and each one seems like it's getting bigger and bigger. And a lot of times, Nevada backroaders or people who really do discover that on a somewhat regular basis feel tapped into something bigger. Whether it's at a hot spring or, you're standing on top of a remote peak or you're fishing your favorite backcountry river or stream, you know, it's easy to feel like you're part of something bigger in Nevada's Great Basin. Anytime you come across an American Indian site, it's that much more palpable. And to me, there's all kinds of pictographs and petroglyphs and sacred sites all over Nevada's Great Basin, but there are a few more reliably accessible spiritual experiences than Toquima Cave. So American Indians were the first people to live in Nevada borders, and they lived here for thousands of years before European explorers first showed up. And evidence of their life is found all over the Nevada's Great Basin. And you can really feel it, you know, particularly at these petroglyph sites that are all over Nevada. I mean, there's dozens of them that you can still visit to this day that the BLM or the tribe will tell you about, but there's probably plenty more. And petroglyphs are like rock carvings, ancient rock carvings that many people believe depicted their day-to-day life. So a lot of them you'll find hunting scenes with bighorns or other, you know, large game animals. Other times you'll find anthropomorphic figures, which represented, you know, many people believe represented their everyday life. And there's all kinds of other amazing symbols and figures that are really up to the interpreter. You know, they behold a lot of sacred meaning that the tribe will guard very closely. But one of the things that I like about visiting these sacred sites is it's, you know, kind of opens up your imagination in new ways, right? You know, all art has meaning, especially some of the oldest art in our country. But what makes Toquima Cave so special is that they're pictographs, which are illustrations, not carvings. So they would use, you know, natural plants and other ground up rocks and things like that to make these different colors. And those that were available at the time were the colors red, black, white, and yellow. And it's common for caves to have a couple of those, you know, pictograph illustrations made in those colors. But it's, from what I understand, to be relatively rare to have a cave that employs all four colors from that era that are still visible today. And Toquima Cave absolutely does. So the Western Shoshone were the people that lived in this part of the central Nevada, modern day central Nevada region. And they lived here, they estimate 1,500 to 3,000 years ago. And they still do. They still have a huge tribe over in the Reese River Valley, which is the Big Smoky Valley is that way. It's one valley over from there, one valley west from here. And they lived in this entire region. You know, you can find evidence of their lives up at Hickison Petroglyphs, which is up on Highway 50, the loneliest road. And then in this mountain range, you know, there's Toquima Cave, which of course was what we're talking about today. But then further south in the Toquima range is called the Alta Toquima Wilderness area. And that place really beholds a lot of mystery. These are some of the larger mountain ranges in the state. You've got the Toyabis to the west, and they have some of the state's top 10 tallest peaks and 50 miles of mountainous terrain that doesn't drop below 10,000 feet. And then in this range, the Toquima range, which is one to the east, you've got Mount Jefferson, which is the fourth tallest peak in Nevada. And up there, they were able to discover one of North America's highest ancient hunting villages that they believe the Western Shoshone lived around and, you know, hunted in and kind of centered their life around in the warmer summer months, because they would, you know, migrate around these valleys with the change of season. So up there, they were able to discover prehistoric hunting blinds from the same folks that used Toquima Cave here, which is absolutely insane. My husband and I summited Mount Jefferson a couple years ago, and it was amazing to see those prehistoric hunting blinds that are all the way up there. But the Alta Toquima is mysterious as well, because it's considered to be one of the most like isolated, rugged wilderness areas of extreme alpine conditions in North America. So it's one of the largest breeding grounds for desert bighorn sheep. And it's so successful the sheep are so successful at living at such high elevations up there that biologists take pairs of those bighorn sheep and move them to other parts of the world to help bolster other high elevation bighorn sheep populations. In there, you'll find all kinds of, other eras of Nevada history. There's a lot of Basque sheep herding that goes on around in that part of Nevada. And there's some of the best arborglyphs or Basque-made tree carvings up in Mount Jefferson in the Alta Toquima wilderness. But, I have to believe that was definitely a place of spiritual importance for the Western Shoshone as well. So they lived in this region of central Nevada, moved into the valleys and the peaks with the seasons. And they most likely came up here to Toquima Cave, where it was common for American Indians or Native Americans to use these places as sort of like a storage or a cache for important items. So Lovelock Cave, you'll find Nevada's official state artifact. The Tule duck decoy was stored there. But then a lot of times they would even entomb their dead, their loved ones in there until they could, find a better place for them in a different season. Or sometimes they would just, keep them in there altogether. Other times they would store all their most treasured items, like these Tule duck decoys they used for hunting, or they had, pottery or things that they would use to trade, or some of their most special, important things for their everyday life that they would use to store in there, keep them safe. But at Toquima Cave, a lot of archaeologists believe that this cave was just a place of spiritual importance that they would come to, and they made these amazing pictographs in all 4 colors: black, white, yellow, and red. And the cave's orientation faces the south, so that also is what helped preserve this all this time. So just the cave's orientation, the way it's sheltered, really is what made it last as long as it has, which is really cool. You can still see them so visibly to this day. So this campground here today is managed by Nevada BLM, but the tribe still, of course, has full control of cave accessibility. So up here at Pete's Summit, you'll find Toquima Cave Campground, BLM Campground. So free public lands camping, which is our favorite. It's pretty primitive. I don't think there's access to any kind of water up here, but there are bathrooms and picnic tables and some fire rings. But at this campground, you'll find trailhead access to the cave. So I think, if I can remember, it's maybe about a half a mile total, flat trail. Around this time of year, it's really, really easy to hike because, of course, there's no precipitation or snow or anything. Flat trail all the way to the cave. Amazing wildflower blooms pretty much all over the place, which makes it really fun. And then you'll get to the cave, which is, of course, a gigantic southward facing cave that you'll spot up on the rock face, and the little trail that leads right up to it. And, places like this are a magnet for freaking vandals and not so nice people. So the tribe did put up a steel grate fence around it. And that's honestly for the best, because this place is so cool. It has to be protected since there's not somebody that's living around it or monitoring it all the time. But it is really great because, unlike a lot of other places like Hidden Cave out by Fallon, or a bunch of these other spiritual sacred sites all over Nevada, they pretty mindfully built this grate over the cave because it's built with these giant steel bars that are large enough to stick your arm and a camera phone inside, or even a DSLR lens can fit all the way inside the cave. So they did make it pretty accessible for the casual visitor to stop by and check out, which makes it pretty cool. And from the cave, it faces southward, and it's pretty easy to see why this was a place of such spiritual importance for the Western Shoshone, because from the view of the cave, you have a 70-mile vantage point, which goes southeast, overlooking Monitor Valley. And it is a sacred spiritual experience for anybody up there today. It's pretty amazing. So I think for me, it's really an important stop because it's so easy. The trail is so easy to get there. Anybody can do it. And I think it's so special seeing what these people were inspired by thousands of years ago. And you can stand in that same spot. I think that being up at Toquima Cave and having that same vantage point, same 70 miles, experience the same view as the first people who lived in Nevada thousands of years ago is a thing of power in itself. But the thing that I always think about when I come to these places, these petroglyph sites or pictograph sites, is that, you know, we know about Nevada's first inhabitants living in these places. And I think, you know, for me and my husband, we always appreciate that and think about the first people to really see something bigger in Nevada and call this their home, and how that shaped the Nevada story forever. But I think the thing that is so special about Toquima Cave is that you don't have to wonder about what their lives were like during that time. It's a physical piece of evidence of what their time was like here in central Nevada. And so is this pin, just like this pin, you know, evidence of our time here. That's a powerful thing. So this one's for you, Toquima Cave. Thanks for letting us be part of your story too.